kids, comics! Silver-haired Bronze Age babe here, yakking about her comic book collection, and today I'd like to talk about Lois Lane and feminism. I know, I can hear your eyes rolling from here. I promise to make this short and hopefully a little enlightening, or at least not too painful. Lois Lane's own book started in 1958 and she ran through 1974. So obviously the book was reflecting an amazing period in American society relative to women. My theory is that that Lois Lane in part was so successful for her first 10 years because she pretty gracefully emulated the times for 10 years from 1958 to 68. And my guess is that the editors and writers knew and perhaps were even married to women like Lois Lane, women who joined the rat race, but who also wanted to get married and have a family. Which isn't to say that there was some Mad Men-esque hostility. Just reading the letter to the editor pages in these books is interesting. One person wrote in fact it was a boy, Martin Maisie from Dorchester, Massachusetts, basically said, Lois Lane has her own book, so does Jimmy Olsen. How about giving Lana Lang her own book? To which they reply, well, the only book Lana is interested in is a cookbook, so she can whip up tempting meals for Superman after she lands him as a husband. But again, I think the readership for this book, then it's like, that it didn't really matter as long as Lois Lane was doing what she was doing, having a job, having adventures, trying to get the only man who won't bore her to death to marry her. It's fine. But by the time the late 60s rolled around and the real breaking, kind of the delineation point for Lois Lane is issue number 80. Things had changed in the zeitgeist. I love this cover because she's ripping out the girlfriend from the top, and she's telling him to get lost, and I think that actually holds for a couple stories, so it's very reflective of what the society was kind of going through at the time. Eventually, the editors handed the editorship of Lois Lane to a woman named Dorothy Wofolk. She had her for 7 issues and tried to impart some feminist messaging in the stories, but at the same time, there was an enormous amount of hostility that was shared via the letters to the editor page, to the point that they actually started a second letter to the editor page called, what is it? Alexander the Great. He was a mystery columnist, and he just was spouting nonsense about nonsense and pretty mean-spirited about the women's movement. He answers one person's letter by saying, if I were you, I'd get together with Superman and form Men's Liberation to free us from those nutty women's libbers. And as for the issue being a mess, it was edited by a woman. Blech. Now, one assumes that Dorothy Wofolk, the editor, was in on this. But, looking back at it now, you have to wonder what they were really thinking in terms of their core readership. At least this 12-year-old girl definitely would not have understood the irony, the tongue-in-cheek nature of that. All I would have seen or heard or read was, hostility that I was getting mirrored through, home and school and friends and all that kind of stuff. But at times I really think that I just wonder if the creators overthought everything. And, they just plain overthought what they did and didn't know about the women's movement. If they were focused on the conflict rather than potential outcomes. And, it's easy now to say, well, golly, you could have a story start with Lois at a bank being turned down for a mortgage because she doesn't have a male cosigner when the bank is robbed by space aliens and she helps save the day. Or she's asking Morganedge for a raise and he's telling her women don't deserve more money when Lex Luthor takes over the airwaves, threatening to blow up Metropolis, blah, 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 blah. So, I can totally appreciate the feelings of some readers who felt that they were being hit over the head with the feminist message at the time. And I don't think it's the intention was wrong. I think it's weak, on-the-nose writing that just didn't help matters very much. And, if I could go back in time and go over to the DC offices, I would have tried to suggest to them that if they had stuck closer to the themes that made Bronze Age Lois a good avatar for the age, things might have worked out better for them. And I look at this last panel in her own, the last issue of her own book, where she says to Perry White, "I've got a scoop for you. Love, not war, or we'll be extinct as the dinosaur." And of course he ends with, that's old hat, Lois. Looks like you do a prank too. If you stuck with the concepts that brought you, and Lois really was about love, not war. So anyway, that's my take on feminism. See, hopefully it didn't hurt too much. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.